Our first presenter is Olivia Spear, and her presentation is Two Rivers Deep, and I'll pass them.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Olivia and my project was Two Rivers Deep, a digital literary map of the Swan and Canning Rivers. There we go. Okay, so the pilot of Two Rivers Deep is basically a prototype to be used as a proof of concept for future development. The purpose of this project was to create a three-dimensional map that was virtual and interactive that could be used by secondary English teachers to engage students with local literary texts. This section of the Swan River between Bassendean and Middle Swan was represented in Unity Game Engine with the Mapbox plugin. For this section of the river, work by a local Western Australian poet, James P. Quinton, was recorded. A variety of panoramas, images, and audio recordings were captured, edited, and placed on the maps at various points of interest. The pilot created a sense of place through evocative soundscapes. There is potential to expand the project to include the entire length of the Swan and Canning Rivers in the future with a variety of different media types. Okay, so before I jump into explaining the project, I will provide a little bit of background about the importance of virtual environments in the classroom and some of the inspiration for the project. So, game-based learning refers to the use of interactive games to assist in teaching and learning. Virtual environments use multimedia technology and technology-enhanced processes to present content in a variety of different ways. This will support, enhance, and extend a wide range of literary texts. Students can analyze work through exploration, interaction, and roleplay from anywhere in the world. Students experience lower levels of boredom and anxiety, and their emotional response has the potential to make the learning experience more engaging and highly motivating. When students have fun, they develop a more complex understanding of the work that they're looking at. The project concept was inspired partially by Granite Sound, which is a guided sound walk created along the streets of Aberdeen in Scotland. Natural sounds of the city, people, poetry, and Aberdeen's rich history was explained through soundscapes played through headphones. The soundscapes are triggered by GPS as the listener walks through the city. Therefore, the experience is limited to local users. Two Rivers Deep currently operates off a computer. This has a benefit, which is that we can access it here in the HIVE instead of in Bassendean. So a future goal is also to turn it into a smartphone app. A basic version of the method I used to create the Two Rivers Deep pilot is on the screen. Very basic, very simple. I started by importing the Mapbox plugin to generate a map in Unity. I then created a player that could navigate the map and a camera that would move. I captured panoramas with a 185-degree angle lens. I used manual focus and a level tripod. I then stitched the panoramas together with PanoWeaver and polished them in Photoshop using content-aware tools and blending. I then added the panoramas as a texture to spheres inside Unity. You can kind of see them there, they're tiny. I captured images in the Bassendean area and recorded the location of each image on Google Maps. I then added these images to the map at their corresponding latitude and longitude points. And then I also ensured that the images always face the player no matter where they are on the map. After that, I recorded audio of the local poet reading out his poems. I also captured location sound and sourced royalty-free sound effects. I then edited soundscapes in Adobe Audition, added these into Unity, and then polished the map a little bit to make it not look so boring. So pictured here are some screenshots of the map in Unity. So on the left is an overview of the map, so that's a top-down view, and then on the right is like an in-game view. Okay, 360-degree panoramas were placed at main points of interest on the map, When the player walks inside the panorama, a poem and a soundscape will begin to play. I'm going to play a short example. I don't know if there's sound. There better be sound.
Dog barks heard.
Oh, it's just quiet.
The river has always sat in front of me, mud between toes, shooting down grassy hills on cardboard. My brother dragged a sheep to the other side, painted a warning on his rose canvas when my sister drowned. She was throwing rocks in water when swallowed. Dog barks heard from the kitchen. Mum came screaming up the hill, a limpid, wet body in her arms, almost dead, like the canaries the dogs killed, lying at the bottom of their cage. A neighbour heard cries from 5 houses away and saved my sister. For a long time I wasn't allowed to go near the river and cursed it.
Okay, so pictured here is a screenshot of a soundscape edited in Adobe Audition. The soundscapes consisted of a poem mixed with natural sounds. I recorded James Quinton reading his poetry on location to get some natural sounds. It was crucial to capture the readings all in one go, so we used 2 audio recorders for consistency and efficiency. There were many possibilities for creating the soundscape. They needed to be evocative, reflect a sense of space, and fit the lyrics of the poems. Music and guitar chords were experimented with, but they didn't feel quite right. So finally, an entirely natural soundscape was chosen, because this created the best ambience to complement the poetry. Each soundscape also contains an atmospheric track which was recorded on location at the exact points of interest. This provided a base that was built upon with other recordings and royalty-free sound effects. These recordings formed like small audio stories around the themes of each poem. Some soundscapes literally reflect the words of the poems, while others took a more interpretive approach based on the feeling of the poems. In addition to the poetry and soundscapes within the panoramas, it was important to recreate the feelings of walking through Bassendean through sound. I layered recordings from the location, and the image on screen is a visual representation of the sounds in Unity. Many of the sounds cover a small radius, while others can be heard throughout large areas. The ambience that a player hears depends entirely on the route that they take through the map. When I got really frustrated in Unity and code just wasn't working for me, I went to the river at Bassendean and I took photos of stuff because that's what I do. So here are basically before and after photos of some of the panoramas that I've taken, and they were stitched together in PanoWeaver. So prior to this project, I had 0 experience in Unity or anything like that. A lot of time in this project was spent just simply learning Unity and using a lot of trial and error to achieve results. I realized that persistence was required to solve problems, and everything would eventually work, even if it felt like I had accomplished nothing. When I first started making the pilot, I realized that building a location-based smartphone app would cause a few problems. It was almost impossible to test because the computer didn't have any location data, and it would require the player to be in Bassendean, which I live in Ardros, so that's not really feasible. We decided to make the project so that it could be demonstrated remotely here at the Hive. Importing audio into Unity seemed simple at first. However, importing the finished soundscapes proved to be quite difficult, as they started to play when the game started, rather than when you walked into the panorama. This meant that the poems were halfway through when the player started to hear them. Many combinations of code and components were tested, but the issue remained, or the audio just didn't play at all. Eventually, I was able to modify and combine some of those elements to get the audio to work. Interestingly, the player was spawning in Finland, and that says HELSINKI prison, like completely random, despite actually building the map surrounding the Perth area. After some digging, we found a default file titled HELSINKI, with hundreds of lines of location data that was seemingly irrelevant, but then all of the data in the script was deleted, and then a simple latitude and longitude coordinates of Perth was put in, and it started working as intended. So, I'm just going to go to the next slide because this happened last night. I had a lot of trouble exporting a build of the project to demo today. So, it was quite stressful as I left it to the last few days and it just wasn't working. There was a problem with the Mapbox data loading in the build. All of the game elements would export, but there was just no map, which is kind of the entire purpose of the project. After messing around with some of the settings and reading through the error list, nothing seemed to fix the problem. I decided that the only way to have a map in the project was to have an image rather than the map generated through Mapbox. So last night I imported a vector of Perth into the project. I recolored the file, resized everything, and removed all traces of Mapbox plugin in the project. This didn't work. The player was spawning in strange places, the map was extremely pixelated, and the ambient audio wasn't sounding how I wanted it. I tried making the panoramas and the images on the map bigger, but this just amplified the problem and made it look very cluttered. Feeling very defeated, I went to bed at 3 AM. But this morning, I gave it another shot with an old version of the project. I simply deleted all of the Mapbox assets from the project and re-imported them, and wow, it magically worked. So, all the extra location data was unnecessary, but the final build worked, so I'm very, very relieved that I can present this today. Oh wait, that was this slide. I added something. Conclusion, okay. So, the aim of the 2 Rivers Deep pilot was to produce a 3-dimensional map of the Swan and Canning Rivers that secondary English teachers could eventually use to engage students with local literature. The map needed to evoke a sense of place by including a variety of panoramas, images, and soundscapes. The project involved choosing a software to produce the program, adding a map with GPS coordinates, capturing panoramas, images, audio, and editing soundscapes, adding them into Unity, and improving map aesthetic slightly, although it doesn't look perfect. After a lot of trial and error, experimentation, and problem solving, we successfully achieved the project brief. So 2 Rivers Deep has a lot of potential in the future. Like I've said before, it can expand to include the entire length of the Swan and Canning Rivers. Further versions of the project could obviously have improved aesthetics, more diverse soundscapes from a wider range of literary texts, more panoramas, more images, improved optimization and usability. The player controller is a little bit clunky. It could also be converted into a smartphone app, have some more game-like elements, and also augmented reality. The content could also include a narrator to introduce the texts, Indigenous Australian content, historical narratives, short stories, local drama, music, artists, dance, like pretty much everything you can think of, like geography, flora, fauna, meditation, like you name it, it can go on that map. Okay, I would like to thank the following people for making 2 Rivers Deep possible. So I'd like to thank my supervisor, Jo, for her guidance and ideas and feedback, and also just like your enthusiasm for it. I'd also like to thank Carly because you're really funny, but you also know heaps, so that's pretty sweet. I'd also like to thank the Curtin HIVE for providing workspace technology and funding, and also James Quinton for letting us record and create visualizations of his poetry. And for those who want them, here are some references, but you don't because that's boring. So, do you have any questions?